A few days ago, I spoke about the difficulty I've been having with the novel I'm writing. I talked about the amount of world building I've done and how I thought that I had soft locked myself, that I'd come up with something so realistic that it was actually at the expense of my plot. And eventually, I had just sort of written myself into a corner and I got a bit frustrated with it. Well, over the past few days, I've made a decision and I've decided that I'm going to leave the novel for the time being. I'm not going to delete any of it. I'm not necessarily going to not go back to it, but I've decided that for now, I'm just going to put it on pause, put it on the shelf, just let it rest, and instead I'm going to write something completely different. Because the problem with my novel was I was basically writing about something I didn't understand, and I had done a lot of research. And the research was fun. I enjoyed doing the research a lot, but the research became something I was doing more than the writing. And I've realized that often what I would talk about when I discussed my book was the fact that if I were that passionate about writing it, that I would just be writing it and I wouldn't really struggle with that. And I think the problem is I've been in denial about the fact that I'm not as passionate about it as I thought I was. I've been obsessed with it. I've been obsessing over it, but obsession isn't the same as passion. And I had sort of got it into my head that this book that I had just started sort of writing on a whim one day had become something I needed to see through to the end. And it was like the sunk cost fallacy that, well, I spent all this time writing it, so I need to continue writing it and finish it, even though that's often not necessarily true. So I thought to myself, if I just put this on hold and if I instead throw myself into writing something completely different to that, how might I feel? So I decided I was going to do that, and over the past few days or so, I've been writing a few notes here and there about something I was thinking of writing. Yesterday, I decided to finally just get on with it and do it. So that's what I started doing. I don't actually have a creative writing background. When it comes to creative writing, I'm entirely self-taught, and that's not a bad thing, but it means that it's not something I'm necessarily an expert at. Whereas what I am an expert at is script writing. I actually have a degree in script writing, and I spent about 2.5 years to 3 years studying it at university, and I had actually been sort of interested in script writing for a long time before then. The first scripts I read properly were the Doctor Who Series 4 specials scripts, which I read online. They were published with The Writer's Tale. And so that would have been around, I suppose, 2010-ish. I'd have been about 13, 14 when I started doing that. So that was always my introduction to writing. That's the thing that inspired me to be a writer. I always enjoyed reading when I was growing up, but that's not the thing that inspired me to go into writing. What inspired me to go into writing was seeing scripts, being able to just instinctively understand them, and that sort of showed me you really can write something that ends up being made into a TV show. So that's what led me to go into script writing. That's what I have a degree in. That's the thing that I've always instinctively understood, because the way my brain works is very it's very structuralist. I've spoke about this occasionally before, the fact that my brain, I tend to think in terms of structure rather than characters and themes. I think in terms of structure, and that within that structure, once you've figured out what it is, you can insert your characters and themes into that. So that's what's always appealed to me about script writing. So I've decided that I'm going to write a script, and I'm going to, because I've always wanted to write a TV drama. Initially, this idea that I thought of, which is semi-autobiographical. It's based on a job I used to have, and I've noted that there aren't many TV shows set in that workplace about the people who do that job. And so I thought that'd be an interesting thing to write, because there isn't much of that. So that's what I've decided to do. And where was I going with this? Initially, I thought this could make an interesting sitcom, and then I thought, yeah, but I'm not actually that funny. I don't think I'm a naturally funny writer. I'm not that good with jokes and gags and things. I mean, I think anything I say that's humorous is often not intended. People have often told me that they find me amusing, and I've always been confused by that because I've never intended to be funny. I don't have a naturally funny mentality, mainly because I'm not a scumbag neurotypical who thinks everything is hilarious. I've never really understood comedy. It's just not a concept that I've ever understood. It's like a language I don't speak. It's it's kind of like music. It just doesn't really do anything for me. So then I thought, okay, well, what about doing a comedy drama? Because with a comedy drama, that's the most true to life genre, and that way you're allowed to write something about something real without it being constantly intense. You're allowed to have humor without having to have it throughout the script. And also, I just think that comedy drama is the most true to life genre. I don't know if I just said that, but life is not drama. Life is not comedy. Life is comedy and drama, and it's usually those two things at the same time. And often you can't tell which one's which when it's happening. And what I've really wanted to do for a long time is to write a comedy drama, a mini series, not an ongoing series, just a mini series with a beginning and a middle and an end. That is sort of like the kind of thing that Paul Abbott might have written in the 2000s. Something real, something about real characters in this country, something that is based on the kind of experiences I've had, the kind of place I grew up, the people I knew when I was growing up. Something that has in it all of the things about life, you know? And I know that that's very broad and generic, and that, well, yeah, of course that's the kind of thing you should write, but it's taken me a while to figure this out, because I left university with a screenwriting degree and immediately started writing a novel. It doesn't really make much sense to me, but I don't really know why I did that. But I've decided now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this script. I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, because I want it to be a limited series with a beginning and a middle and an end. I prefer that. I like a good mini series. Shows that have lots of episodes and lots of seasons, I don't care. I like a good mini series. So that's what I want to do. So I have to ask myself, okay, what are the episodes going to be? What number of episodes will there be? That's got to be one of the first things that I decide. And also, the problem is, even though I'm writing something semi-autobiographical, life doesn't naturally have a beginning and a middle and an end. So I've got to decide, based on my experiences and the particular time in my life that I'm drawing on, what is the dramatic hook? There needs to be an actual hook that is clear from the beginning and that develops so that there's constant momentum and that it actually goes somewhere. Because in real life, that's not necessarily how things work. And that's the one artificial element of writing a story of any kind. It's that you have to find that dramatic hook that is never explicit in life. There are usually lots of small dramatic hooks that develop over time. And some of them go nowhere, but this, I need to have a dramatic hook from the beginning. And it needs to go somewhere straight away. And there needs to be momentum. So I need to figure out what that is. And there are lots of different angles I could exploit as well. And so that's really the question I've got. But I'm wondering, should I necessarily do much outlining? I don't know, because I spent so much time writing notes with my last novel. I think I must have more notes than story, and I've got so much outline and so many scene by scene breakdowns and all sorts of different things that what I'm thinking is, because I made a video a while ago called The Architecture of Writing, and I forget who said this. I think it might have been George R.R. Martin. I think maybe he was talking about how some writers are architects and some writers are archaeologists, and that an architect likes to plan everything in advance. The problem is, though, as I've discovered with this novel, no amount of planning can actually anticipate what you will discover when you're writing. and you'll discover something that will completely throw off everything you'd planned. You'll either realize something doesn't work, you'll either discover the potential of something that you hadn't expected to have that much potential. Writing it, what you end up writing will often disprove the theory of the story you had before you were writing it. So I'm wondering if, with this script, I should just start writing and just keep writing until eventually I just discover what the hook is implicitly through the writing of it. Just write characters and scenes and then just doing stuff. And if I do that for long enough, maybe eventually I'll find the hook and that's what the story will be. And then I can restart and finally start knowing what the hook is. Maybe. You know, you have to do a lot of digging. And right now, with the way that I'm alternating, where I write every other day. I've tried writing every day in the past. I would often burn out quite quickly. I'd have like a good 2 weeks and then I would drop off for a month. So alternating every other day, I find that helps because it means I get to rest and then I get to write in equal measure. And so if I maybe just spend my writing days just doing constant writing, even if it's not going anywhere, even if I just don't think that it has much story to it, if I just keep writing, eventually maybe it's kind of like going out into the garden and just digging, not knowing what I'm looking for, but telling myself if I keep digging, I'll find something. And with a story, you always do. It's like that meme of the guy with the pickaxe. You just have to keep going. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a Doctor Who episode called Heaven Sent, which is a pretty good analogy for the writing process, where if you just keep going, eventually you'll find whatever it is you're looking for. It's a bit like doing therapy, because with therapy, you just keep talking about yourself and your life and your memories and your experiences and people you know and your relationships and stuff. And eventually, once you've done enough talking about your life, you have a breakthrough and you realize something and it makes a difference. So that's what I'm going to try with this. I'm just going to try just start writing, see where it goes, and if I write enough, if I'm able to get enough writing done every day, I'll find that hook myself. Something will happen and I'll think, oh, that's very good, and I'll start writing about that, because that's what the professional writers do. They just write, you know. A writer writes. The best writing advice I've ever heard was, I forget the writer's name. He wrote Hustle. And the best writing advice I've ever heard is from him, where he was saying, a writer writes. The clue is in the name. Writer? Fucking right. So that's what I'm going to do. You know, no theory, no design process, no drawing board, nothing. Just write. Writers write. And the thing is, I'm actually feeling oddly enthusiastic about the script I've started writing, which is unusual for me. Usually I'm not feeling that enthusiastic, but I'm actually feeling drawn to this. With my novel, I would keep putting it off, and I would keep putting it off, and I would keep putting it off, and I'd find any excuse not to write. And when I finally ran out of excuses, I'd get annoyed that I'd run out of excuses, and I would tell myself I was going to start writing, but I still never would. And I got this phantom paralysis, and I hated it, and I hated it. With my script, I don't have that problem. For some reason, I'm just naturally drawn to do it. And I always thought that writing was writing. It turns out writing a novel and writing a screenplay are basically almost entirely different. What's the word? In terms of the way my brain thinks about them, my brain thinks of them as completely different things, which is weird. And I don't understand people who can write both. I really don't. I've no idea how they do it, but I'm actually feeling drawn to this script I'm writing, and I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow because it means I can write some more. Now you might just say, well, why not write today if you're that drawn to it? Because I want to make sure I don't burn out, and I want to make sure that I pace myself and I don't force myself to write too often, and that I'm able to sort of resist the urge to overwrite. But that's what I'm doing right now. That's the position I'm in. I'm going to go write a mini series based on my life, and I'm feeling pretty good about where I am. I don't have a dramatic hook. I don't really know what the story is, but I tell myself if I just do enough writing and if I stick to it and I do it often enough, I will find in the process that what I'm looking for is there. No idea is thought of. You already have all the ideas you're ever going to get. You just have to rummage around your brain and find them. You know? So that's what I'm doing. It turns out I'm not an architect. I'm not good at being an architect. I'm an archaeologist. I have to go and find my story. And the story that I'm drawn to is pretty damn compelling to me. And I'm not actually struggling to make myself write it. And I'm actually looking forward to being able to do it. Maybe that's all I needed to be doing this whole time. And I don't know why I decided, after graduating with a degree in screenwriting, that I decided to then go and write a novel. I don't know why I did that. But still, during that experience, I had this job. I've now got the memories of that job and that workplace and those people. So who knows? But you know, life is all about wishing you had started doing something earlier. At least I finally realised it now. You know, so that's what I'm gonna do. And obviously, there's the question of, well, yeah, but once you've written a script, someone's got to make it. You know, like with a novel, you can self-publish it. What are you going to do with a script? I do have an idea, and I'm going to get to that later. But for now, I'm going to go write this script, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. And that's really weird for me, and I hope this lasts. Because usually, when I'm feeling good about writing, it only lasts for a few days. But this, I actually think, could potentially be something. All I had to do was just write from my own experience in a format that I'm good at writing in. Who knew?